Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on what time of day you're watching us. I'm Mark Josephson, founder of Castiron, and welcome to the next amazing edition of Castiron Bites. I am beyond thrilled to be meeting a true boss, a baking boss, and that's Naomi Rose of bakingboss.net. Naomi, welcome to Castiron Bites.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
It is lovely to meet you. In my travels and journeys through this industry, I come across people who are interesting, who are inspiring, who have great stories. Not everybody's a motorbike rider and a classical cellist, and
I
a baker.
don't do both at the same time, just to clarify.
Okay, all right. Well, that's what I was hoping to get some sort of demonstration today. But I wanted to meet you, Naomi, because so much of what you do is so relevant to our audience, and it's really was summed up for me in reading your bio. And I want you to tell us your story in a second. But you said, I read everything about you, that you love baking and you love being a boss.
Yeah,
And that
totally.
really just resonated with me because of that intersection between creativity and business, and like that we all have some sort of like, I don't know, they're not they don't have to be conflicting goals.
No.
Um, so maybe Naomi, tell us in a bit your story, and how you introduce yourself.
So I guess probably coming on for nearly 6 years ago, I actually decided I was working 9 to 5. So I was working in marketing, social media, digital comms, branding, project management. So I love doing anything to do with digital and marketing. That was kind of my thing. But I was really getting quite bored of doing a 9 to 5 job working for someone else. And mostly because I'm not very good at taking instruction from other people. I like making my own decisions, and I worked for some really nice companies, but it wasn't really. I just kind of got to that point where I thought, is this really it? Is this what I'm going to be doing now for the next 40, 50 years? Is this where I'm going to get to? And that's when I started to think about going and running my own business. So initially, I was actually looking at opening a social media consultancy. That was where I was going to head. So I'd given my notice in a year before I actually left my job, and I had already quit, but they said, please, can you stay and cover another role for us for a year? I said, okay, but I'm not, that's it. That's the end of my contract then. I've written myself out of the company, which I did. So I actually made myself a deadline. And in that kind of a year, this opportunity came up, and every weekend my husband and I would walk along our river in our local town of Cambridgeshire, where I used to live, with our dog, and we'd sit outside a chain cafe and think about, if we owned one, what would we do? We overlooked another one. It was this derelict building, but we overlooked, that was an old hotel, and it was on the river, and we kind of imagined what we would do if we owned that. But as we were walking back one day, there was another building that was just starting to be renovated, and the lady renovating it said, do you want to have a look? And I like my local town, and I'm also very nosy, so we walked in, and it underneath this old nightclub, it was an old nightclub, it had an amusement arcade in the corner, lime green bathrooms, it was horrendous. But it was actually a 1920s Art Deco building with the original features still in there. And I walked in, and it looked nothing like what we ended up turning it into. But I was like, this is going to make the most amazing space for a cafe, a bar, entertainment, music, that kind of thing. And it kind of just slightly started snowballing from there. I had this idea, I started talking about it, and the next thing I know, I'm signing a contract and we're pulling down ceilings. And
Oh my gosh.
within 3 months of us actually officially renting the building, we opened, and it was a complete something I'd never done before. I'd quit my job, and obviously my contract was coming to an end anyway, but it was a complete 360 as to what I had been doing to suddenly go in and do this without
Now,
any prior knowledge.
were you how good of a baker were you before?
Nothing like I am now. I mean, I was a home baker. I mean, I hadn't professionally trained. I hadn't gone to like culinary school. I'd done a couple of bread making courses, and even then I wasn't going to start with bread. We were just
Yeah.
baking cakes, and I didn't know anything about gluten free. I didn't know anything about vegan. I just knew I liked to
There's a
bake.
big leap between being, you say home baker, but you weren't selling anything. You were just
No, no, no,
baking for
no,
your own
no.
stuff. But to
Yeah,
be
I was
actually
baking
building
for
something,
work.
that's a huge leap. That's a huge leap to make. Um, Tell me about what it means. Well, so and remember, everybody, you already probably want to talk more to Naomi, and you can, by the way, book a one-on-one, a free one-on-one consultation, and then
Yeah.
work directly with you on bespoke programs at
Hmm.
bakingboss.net,
Yeah.
www.bakingboss.net. What does it mean to be a boss? What does that mean for you? I know what it means to be a baker. I know what I like about being a boss, but what does that mean for you?
The one thing I was really passionate when certainly in my career, so I actually, before I actually quit my job, I was also a boss then. So I'd been a boss for quite a long time and I'd managed, at the time, I was managing, heading up a whole digital team. So that was what I did. But the thing I really enjoyed about being a boss was actually motivating other people and allowing them to develop and grow their skills and knowledge. And that was something I was very keen on doing as part of my business, was to give people the opportunity to be able to be creative, but grow their skills, grow their knowledge, and enjoy their jobs, because you spend most of your life with the people you work with, and you spend a lot of time at work. And if you're not at work, often you're thinking about it. And that was a really key thing I wanted to do. And it wasn't necessarily always young people, because my staff ranged from sort of 15, 16 up to 78. So I had a
Wow.
real broad spectrum of people, but it was giving people the opportunity to really grow, learn, and build something together, which was quite exciting, because I I was going in as about as novice as some of the people I was employing. In fact, some of the people I employed knew lot more about baking than I did. But I knew that together we could create something that was quite special if I found the right people. And that was what was really important. So it was about nurturing the people. And people buy from people that they like. So
Yeah.
that was a whole ethos of my business, was to kind of have that attitude of friendliness, warmth, caring. Anyone could come in, whether they were just coming in for a coffee or just needed to go somewhere for a bit of company, and know that there was a friendly face at the other end. And that was what I really wanted to build. It was that sense of community for people.
Yeah, that's really nice. And I wonder, as you're saying this, that people like to buy from people that they like. And when you work with your clients now, how do you get them to show that through their baking or their business? How does that, how do people bring that to life?
I mean, in so many different ways. I think the one thing that, my background being marketing, digital brand, I've worked in that for 15, 20 years. And that's what I really kind of specialize in a lot. I mean, I've obviously built my business from scratch, but that was where I had my experience. Was I really knew who my customers were before I opened my bakery, or my cafe, bar and bakery. I knew who would buy from me. I knew that the bar would have a different customer base to the cafe. There would be some overlap, but I knew exactly what they liked, what they
How,
didn't
how,
like.
how did you know that? And how do you teach somebody to know that?
It's just really, I mean, a lot of the time, your ideal customer is a version of yourself in some form. But what you do is you just get into the mindset of that kind of person. So I knew there'll be different types of people, because often we think, oh, we'll market to the general public in my local area. I know that not everybody's going to like what I do in my local area, but there was other places that they would like, and that would be fine, because it's about community. But I knew that there would be used to call ladies at lunch, that would come in and have a long lunch with their girlfriends and have a gossip and have lunch and then a slice of cake. I knew that we'd get families coming in on the weekend, and I'd really worked hard on what the sort of things they would like to watch, what they would enjoy doing. And you have to almost just kind of put your own mind into what they would like and enjoy, and how you then resonate to them and how you can talk to them. And then that way, you know who you're targeting and how you reach them. Because that's the important bit, is actually then you can kind of go, well, I know who they are now. So it's just a matter of figuring out how I reach them and tell them about what I've got that they will like. And it's
Yeah.
marrying those two up, which sounds quite complicated, but when you actually start to break it down, it's actually makes it so much easier to know that, well, I know that these customers are going to be the ones that I'm going to work with,
Yeah.
because that's what they're going to like and enjoy. But I know we might get someone like that coming in, but they're probably not going to be a long-term customer of mine. So it really just
Yeah.
helps. And it's okay. That's okay to not please everybody, because we
Yeah.
can't.
No,
And
we can't.
we don't like everything. As a consumer, we like certain brands, we don't like others. It's just the way we're built. But by knowing who those people are, it really helps build that foundation in your business.
That's it's so helpful, and it's so difficult, I think, for entrepreneurs to get really focused, because you
Mm.
think, oftentimes I see people thinking to get big, they have to be big. And that's not necessarily true. So I'm sure everybody is racing to their browsers now and typing in bakingboss.net to book a
Yeah.
free time with Naomi. Naomi, talk to me a little about when you're when you have a client and you're coaching them on how to be a baking boss. What are some of the common mistakes that you see, or common mistakes?
I think, I mean, a lot of what I see is comes down to mindset. So it's actually having that self-belief. So it's really having the confidence to go out and do stuff and actually put yourself out there. I think, going back to my sort of previous point as well, I was a baker, a home baker when I first started, but the products that I sold actually ended up selling in the cafe. I knew I wanted to make stuff homemade. They came much later on in my planning. I didn't know what I was going to do when I first did it, because I knew that without the customers, it didn't matter what I sold. But if I knew who the customers was, I could actually work out what I was going to sell and how I was going to sell it. So a lot of people start with a product rather than thinking
Hmm?
about who's going to buy it. And sometimes that is
Yeah.
often the mistake we can easily make. But when you know a customer, it's so much easier to sell to them and so much more enjoyable, because a lot of people hate selling, but hey, afraid we are in the business of selling, but we don't have to make it sleazy.
Well, yeah, right. And people hate to sell, but they love the joy that they get when someone loves their product, right?
Yeah,
And it is
absolutely.
that moment of joy. It's such an interesting distinction between. Um, you're right. I see so many people come in and say, "Well, I make amazing decorated sugar cookies," but and then they go looking for people who want sugar cookies, versus, here is this group of people in my local area or in my community that has a need that I can fill. And maybe instead of sugar cookies, I should be making sourdough, or instead of sourdough, I should be making, meal prep or something, like something that
Yeah.
that finds that, and connecting the joy. Can you double click on mindset? Because I'm obsessed with mindset.
Hmm.
Like manifesting, believing in yourself, faking it till you make it. How do what do you see when in what are some common pitfalls with mindset, or how do you talk about that with your clients?
A lot of it, I mean, mindset is your kind of your biggest the mind is the strongest muscle in your body. So it's also can be your biggest weapon as well, because you can go down all these kind of paths with people, particularly in the online space now, where you kind of can make up all these different stories. I think where I see mindset affected the most is often when it comes to pricing, because we seem to value ourselves, our monetary value, based on our worth. So often as bakers, because we're people pleasers, we tend to underprice ourselves because we feel that we're not worth that amount of money. So I think having in a way, being in my head, I'm half creative and I'm very much half a spreadsheet kind of gal. But having something on paper that shows the step-by-step process, so you can actually see the evidence of how you're working stuff out and bringing it back to the most sensible thing, I find that really helps my mindset. Because if I just let my mind and go off into a tangent, it will go fill itself with self-doubt, non-belief, all of that kind of thing, which I had at many, many stages throughout my business. It doesn't go away. It's just the journey of an entrepreneur. But then you have to look at all of the things that you do right and focus on all of the things that allow you to grow, because business is not hard and fast rules. Every business has a different every business is different. Everything you do will be different to someone else. Your journey is different to someone else.
Yeah.
But what we do is we learn and grow, and having that ability to allow yourself to learn and grow, I probably spend more time working on my mindset than anything else I do in my business, believe it or
Hmm.
not, because
Yeah.
it's so important.
It really is. And bakingboss.net to book a time with Naomi, and she'll help you with your mindset. What does a typical engagement look like for you? How do people work with you?
They work in all sorts of ways. I mean, I started Baking Boss last year, so I'm still very much in the early foundation. So I work with people on one-to-one sort of basis. I'm doing master classes. There's going to be a baking course coming out soon. I've got my book. I actually wrote a cookbook towards the end of last year because that was one of my goals, that I wanted to actually put the collection of recipes that I'd been doing for the last 5-6 years that I've been writing into a book. So that was one of the things. So there's so many different ways that I actually work with people. I mean, my area of expertise is anything really to do with business. That's what I love doing. But I mean, I teach the baking side as well. But marketing and customer content management, all of that kind of thing is really some of the stuff that I know the nitty gritty of, because I've done it for 20 years and
Yeah.
launching things. I've done a lot of launches.
Yeah, it really feels like every time you figure something out, there's something new, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
particularly, there's so much of the marketing has to happen on these social platforms that are, in my opinion, frustrating, challenging, not necessarily your friend. Um,
Yeah.
what's the what do you have a prediction for 2024? Like what's going to be big and what's something that what's really important? If there's one thing for social media or one thing for marketing in 2024, how would you boil
I
it down?
say, well, the one that, I mean, I've done social media since before Facebook pages even existed. I was back in the world of groups before businesses were allowed on Facebook. I was like starting to put my companies onto the social pages back in the day. So I've seen the whole shebang of it. I mean, particularly as the platforms have grown and got bigger, sometimes you feel it's really, really hard to get that cut through on social. The key thing with it is consistency. You can't sell enough. You can't post enough. Not everyone's going to see what you post. So if you talk about your product every single day in 6 places, people might see one in a
Mm,
week. So you can't talk about it enough. The other thing that I would say that often baking business owners forget is the power of email. So we so often are so focused on the visibility of actually building our social media channels, we forget that probably where you'll convert your sales most is in your email list. And the one thing about email that has an advantage over social, where we think, oh, this is really hard work, we couldn't possibly do that. Social's so easy to get. It's so easy to get hacked these days on social, and then suddenly you've lost all your customers and they're gone. Whereas your
yes.
email list, you've got that security, and you've got so much more information and data by building it, by building that loyalty. It really, really helps. So I honestly do believe that email is often overlooked, but can be one of the biggest converters. So social is great for visibility, but to get more sales, then your email list is something to really focus on.
That's amazing. And we're not, this is not about cast iron, but we have a cast iron. Part of your cast iron account comes with an email list building
Mm.
tool and automated emails because I couldn't agree with you more. Whether your social gets hacked or it goes down for a day, or they decide all of a sudden, because I know I look like I'm 20, but I'm not. I've been around for a while. And I remember when they, Facebook wanted everybody to have a page, every business to have a page.
Yeah,
And then they decided, oh, by the way, you got everybody to follow you, and now we're going to throttle your reach.
yeah.
If you want to reach everybody, you have to pay. And that trend is going to continue, right? Every time you get in on something, then it's going to turn to paid, and that's a challenge. Um, Gosh, I'm a marketer before I was a software guy, so hearing you talk about this stuff really resonates with me. Um, What? So I guess I have a last question before our rapid fire questions. Um, well, I'm really the mindset thing around being a boss is and the difference between well, actually, when I asked you about being a boss, you talked about being a great manager, I think. What's
Yes.
the difference between being a manager and a boss? What does a boss mean?
So
Like,
yeah, I think there's a difference between being a leader and being a manager, and they're two very different roles. So often, particularly in corporate companies, you sort of work your way up the ladder, and they sort of start to get muddled. So a leader is about thinking about that big picture vision. It's about leading your team. It's about being the one that sees clearly what direction you are heading in.
what if you're a
And
team of one? Think about that maybe because a lot of our customers and people listening today are teams of one.
so I actually think it's still the same thing.
Okay.
So being a team of one, so having that CEO mindset. Now, you might be doing all the roles in your business. So there might be, I mean, I've done many roles when even with a team of staff, I still did lots of roles. But the one biggest role you can be is a CEO. And that's what you have to think about is, as a CEO of your one company, what is it that you need to operate? And you have to think like that. So you have to kind of have the one thing that, often we leave corporate because we don't like being in that industry anymore. But the one thing they do very good at is that structure and thinking with that big vision at the top. And then they break it down into all those roles. So being a boss is really seeing that vision, keeping that strategy focused, and then you can work out everything else below it. So the managing bits are the day-to-day stuff. But what you need is that big picture vision in your head. And that's one of the most important things about being your own boss, is knowing exactly where you want to head.
I don't know. I mean, can I book a meeting with you? I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
I'm a CEO, and I need all the help, and I do have a coach, so I think we can all do better. So
Yeah.
bakingboss.net, you offer a free initial consultation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yes.
So I think I mean, I've taken so many notes here already that I think are really valuable. I can't wait to edit this into some clips to share. It's really great. Now we get to the part, a little rapid fire. You've not been prepped for this.
No, not at
So,
all.
all right, but it's super easy. Naomi, what's the best meal you ever had?
Oh, best meal I had ever had. That's a really good question. I've been to some fabulous places. One of the best meals I ever had was actually here where I live now. So I live in North Yorkshire. I went to York to Roots restaurant, and Tommy Banks, who's a Michelin star chef, is a head chef there. And it was a fabulous meal. But the nice thing about it was, being Michelin star, it was also super casual and easy flowing. And you actually you don't have to turn up in anything, but and they also made their own sourdough. So I was super impressed with that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Naomi, what's the best piece of advice you have ever been given, and by whom?
Best piece of advice. So I heard this. So I actually meditate. So I meditate every day because it's really good for your mindset. And on the Daily Calm, on the Calm app, they do a Daily Calm. The best piece of advice, and I don't know who the source of it said, was opinion is the lowest form of knowledge. And that is something that I kept very clearly in my mind of managing customers and doing anything to do with business. That it's always good to listen, but you're the only one that truly knows the right information that's right for you.
That's so good. That's so good. All right. And the last question, Naomi, is who's somebody that inspires you and that we might want to talk to next on our journey of meeting really inspirational and interesting and wonderful people in our space?
Oh, I have so many inspirational people. I mean, like you, I work with mentors myself, and I find them truly inspirational, what some of them have done. I work with people like Lisa Johnson, who's actually does a lot around strategy and passive income here in the UK, not necessarily in the baking world, but really, really great coach. And Charlie Day is a whiz at sales. I'm actually doing a guest podcast with her tomorrow, which I'm very excited about. But in the baking world, some of the people that inspire me include, there's just such a long list, but Nadia Hussain, who won Great British Bake Off, I think her journey is really fascinating. But the reason she inspires me the most is she's not afraid to try different things and go outside the box, blending her cultures. So some of the recipes she comes up with, I'm just like, how do you get these out of your mind? It's just incredible. But she doesn't let her creativity stop with what's gone before her. She just creates. And I think that's amazing too, because she makes such tasty food as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Naomi, I have enjoyed this immensely. I know our community will as well. Bakingboss.net is where you can find Naomi. And I think you're crazy if you don't book a free session, because there's just so much value to be had here. I can't thank you enough for joining us and sharing your wisdom with our community, Naomi. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely talking to you.